In December 2023, Iran's intelligence ministry made an announcement that sent ripples through the global intelligence community. They claimed to have dismantled an extensive Mossad espionage network operating across 28 countries on multiple continents. Not just in the Middle East. Not just in neighboring states. But across Europe, Asia, Africa, and beyond. According to Iranian authorities, this network included operatives conducting surveillance, recruiting assets, planning sabotage operations, and gathering intelligence on Iranian interests worldwide. The claim was staggering in its scope. But it immediately raised critical questions. How did Iran discover operatives spread across nearly 30 countries? What were these alleged agents actually doing? And perhaps most importantly, why is Iran announcing this now? What we're looking at isn't just another spy story. It's a window into the invisible war being fought right now across every continent, where intelligence services battle in the shadows while the world remains largely unaware. To understand what Iran claims to have uncovered, we first need to understand the decades-long intelligence war between Iran and Israel. This isn't a new conflict. It's been escalating for over 40 years, ever since Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution transformed a country that had maintained quiet relations with Israel into one of its most determined adversaries. Israel views Iran's nuclear program, its support for Hezbollah and Hamas, and its regional influence as existential threats. Iran sees Israel as an aggressive power backed by the United States, conducting operations inside Iranian territory and assassinating Iranian scientists and officials. The result has been one of the most sustained covert conflicts in modern history. Mossad, Israel's foreign intelligence service, has operated inside Iran for decades. They've conducted some of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in history. In 2018, Mossad operatives broke into a warehouse in Tehran and stole Iran's entire nuclear archive, smuggling 500 tons of documents out of the country. Between 2010 and 2020, at least 6 Iranian nuclear scientists were assassinated in operations widely attributed to Israeli intelligence. In 2020, Iran's top nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was killed by a remote-controlled machine gun operated via satellite. These operations require extensive networks of human intelligence, technical surveillance, logistics support, and local assets. They require safe houses, communication systems, transportation networks, and people willing to risk their lives operating inside hostile territory. But intelligence operations don't stop at Iran's borders. When you're targeting a country's nuclear program, its military leadership, and its proxy networks across the region, you need intelligence collection everywhere Iranian interests operate. You need to monitor Iranian officials when they travel abroad. You need to track weapons shipments moving through third countries. You need to identify Iranian intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover in foreign capitals. You need to monitor Iranian diaspora communities for regime operatives, dissidents who might become sources, and financial networks moving money to fund proxy forces. This is why Iran's claim of discovering Mossad networks in 28 countries isn't as implausible as it might initially sound. Because modern intelligence operations are truly global in scope. Iran's Ministry of Intelligence announced this discovery in December 2023, claiming they had identified and neutralized what they described as an extensive Mossad espionage infrastructure. According to Iranian statements, this network spanned 28 countries across Europe, Asia, Africa, and other regions. Iranian authorities claimed the operatives were engaged in multiple types of activities. Surveillance of Iranian officials, facilities, and diaspora communities abroad. Recruitment of assets who could provide intelligence or conduct operations. Planning sabotage operations against Iranian interests in foreign countries. And cyber operations targeting Iranian government systems and critical infrastructure. Iran specifically highlighted that some of these alleged operatives were Iranian nationals living abroad who had been recruited by Israeli intelligence. Others were reportedly foreign nationals working for front companies or using legitimate business activities as cover for intelligence collection. Iranian authorities claimed to have gathered evidence through signals intelligence, human sources, financial tracking, and cooperation with security services in some of the countries where these networks allegedly operated. They announced arrests in multiple countries and claimed to have disrupted planned operations targeting Iranian facilities and personnel. Now, we need to be clear about what we can actually verify versus what remains Iranian government claims. Western intelligence agencies haven't publicly confirmed Iran's specific allegations about the scope of this network or the number of countries involved. Human rights organizations have documented that Iran regularly uses espionage charges for political purposes and extracts false confessions through coercion. Some individuals arrested and accused of working for Mossad may be innocent civilians caught up in politically motivated prosecutions. However, the strategic logic is sound. Mossad does operate networks outside Iran to monitor Iranian activities globally. And Iran does have counterintelligence capabilities that can detect some of these operations. The question isn't whether Israeli intelligence operates globally. The question is what percentage of what Iran claims represents genuine counterintelligence success versus strategic messaging. To understand how this type of network could function across 28 countries, we need to examine how modern intelligence operations actually work in the 21st century. Gone are the days when espionage was primarily about case officers meeting agents in dark alleys. Modern intelligence operations are sophisticated, layered, and heavily dependent on technology, but they still require human networks providing critical on-the-ground intelligence. A global intelligence network targeting Iranian interests would likely include several distinct components. First, strategic intelligence collection focused on tracking senior Iranian officials when they travel internationally. This means surveillance teams in cities where Iranians conduct diplomatic meetings, business negotiations, or medical treatment. These teams photograph subjects, document their meetings, track their movements, and identify patterns that reveal intentions and relationships. Second, technical operations targeting Iranian communications and cyber infrastructure. This includes intercepting communications, penetrating computer networks, and gathering signals intelligence that reveals Iranian planning and operations. Third, human intelligence networks recruiting sources with access to information Israel needs. This might include Iranian diplomats willing to provide classified information, businessmen involved in sanctions evasion who can reveal financial networks, or Iranian intelligence officers who become double agents. Fourth, logistical support networks that facilitate operations inside Iran itself. This means safe houses, transportation, communication systems, and financial infrastructure that allows operatives to move, communicate, and operate inside Iranian territory. Some of these support networks necessarily exist in neighboring countries or locations where operatives transit before entering Iran. Fifth, diaspora monitoring focused on Iranian exile communities. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians live abroad, including political dissidents, former regime officials, and ordinary citizens who left for economic reasons. Intelligence services monitor these communities both to identify potential sources and to detect Iranian intelligence officers operating among diaspora populations. Each of these network components requires people. Local citizens recruited to conduct surveillance, rent properties, or provide logistical support. Foreign nationals working for front companies that provide cover for intelligence activities. Intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover in embassies and consulates. And technical specialists managing cyber operations and signals intelligence collection. Coordinating networks across 28 countries requires sophisticated operational security, secure communications, compartmentalization to prevent one compromised operative from exposing the entire network, and constant adaptation to counterintelligence threats. How would Iran detect such networks? Modern counterintelligence combines technical surveillance with human sources and international cooperation. Signals intelligence monitors electronic communications for patterns indicating espionage activity. Financial intelligence tracks suspicious money transfers that might represent intelligence service payments to assets. Physical surveillance identifies individuals conducting reconnaissance or meeting in patterns consistent with intelligence operations. And human sources within targeted communities report suspicious recruitment attempts or unusual interest in sensitive information. Iran also benefits from cooperation with security services in some countries where these networks allegedly operated. Not every country maintains close intelligence relationships with Israel, and some nations share information with Iran based on their own strategic interests. When Iran claims to have dismantled networks in 28 countries, part of that success may come from foreign security services who detected Israeli intelligence activities on their soil and shared that information with Tehran, either as a diplomatic gesture or because they objected to foreign intelligence operations in their territory. The geopolitical implications of Iran's announcement extend far beyond the immediate intelligence battle between Tehran and Jerusalem. First, this represents a significant intelligence messaging operation regardless of the specific factual details. By announcing the discovery of networks in 28 countries, Iran signals to Israel that their operational security has been compromised on a global scale. This creates uncertainty within Israeli intelligence about which networks remain secure, which communication methods are compromised, and which foreign environments are now too dangerous for operations. That uncertainty degrades operational effectiveness even if Iran's claims are partially exaggerated. Second, this announcement serves domestic political purposes within Iran. The government faces ongoing legitimacy challenges, economic problems, and public dissatisfaction. Announcing major counterintelligence victories demonstrates the government's capability and portrays it as successfully defending Iran against foreign threats. Whether the networks were as extensive as claimed matters less than the political message to domestic audiences. Third, this affects Iran's relationships with the 28 countries allegedly involved. If Iranian officials or interests were under surveillance in these nations, it creates diplomatic friction. Some countries may feel obligated to investigate whether foreign intelligence services were operating on their soil without permission. Others may face pressure from Iran to take action against alleged Israeli intelligence activities. This creates complications for countries trying to maintain relationships with both Israel and Iran. Fourth, this escalates the broader regional intelligence war. Every successful counterintelligence operation forces the targeted intelligence service to adapt. Mossad will need to assess what was compromised, rebuild networks using different methodologies, and develop new operational security measures. This adaptation cycle consumes resources, time, and operational capability. If Iran genuinely degraded significant Israeli intelligence infrastructure, it affects Israel's ability to monitor Iranian nuclear activities, track weapons shipments to Hezbollah and Hamas, and conduct operations that Israeli security depends upon. Fifth, this demonstrates the truly global nature of modern intelligence conflicts. Espionage is no longer confined to adversary territory or border regions. Intelligence services operate on every continent, in allied countries, in neutral nations, anywhere their intelligence requirements lead them. The fact that this alleged network spanned 28 countries shows how modern intelligence collection requires global reach to monitor an adversary's international activities, financial networks, procurement operations, and diplomatic engagements. From an analytical perspective, we should consider multiple possibilities about what actually happened. The optimistic interpretation from Iran's perspective is that this represents a genuine counterintelligence breakthrough where Iranian intelligence successfully identified and neutralized an extensive Mossad network through skilled investigation and international cooperation. The strategic messaging interpretation suggests Iran may have discovered some genuine Israeli intelligence activities but exaggerated the scope for political and psychological impact, using a real counterintelligence success as the foundation for broader claims. The middle ground assessment is that Iran identified elements of Israeli intelligence infrastructure in multiple countries, with the actual extent somewhere between Israeli operational losses that matter and Iran's public claims of total network dismantlement. What we can assess with confidence is that Israel does conduct global intelligence operations targeting Iranian interests, that Iran does have counterintelligence capabilities that sometimes succeed in detecting these operations, and that both countries use intelligence successes and failures as tools for strategic messaging. The announcement serves Iranian interests whether the network was exactly as described or whether the scope was amplified for effect. It creates operational problems for Israeli intelligence, demonstrates Iranian capability to domestic and international audiences, and reminds the world that the Iran-Israel conflict extends far beyond the Middle East into a truly global intelligence war. This case illuminates something most people don't fully grasp about modern international relations. Behind the diplomatic statements, the trade agreements, and the public summits, intelligence services are fighting invisible wars every single day. They're recruiting sources in foreign capitals. They're penetrating computer networks across borders. They're conducting surveillance in dozens of countries simultaneously. They're building networks that can take years to develop and can be destroyed in days if counterintelligence discovers them. And these intelligence battles directly shape the visible world of international politics. The information gathered determines military targeting decisions. The operations conducted prevent or enable acts of war. The success or failure of intelligence services can mean the difference between peace and conflict, between security and vulnerability, between knowing what your adversary plans and being surprised by what they do. What Iran claimed to have discovered and what they actually discovered may not be identical, but the underlying reality remains. Israeli and Iranian intelligence services are fighting a global shadow war right now, at this moment, in cities across every continent. And that invisible war shapes the Middle East's future in ways the public rarely sees until operations succeed spectacularly or fail catastrophically. This is the world of modern espionage. Not the Hollywood version, but the patient, methodical, global competition between intelligence services that never stops, never becomes fully visible, and never truly ends because the strategic competition that drives it continues. If you want to understand the intelligence operations shaping global politics, subscribe to WarRoom Intel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the spy networks, covert operations, and shadow wars that determine what happens in the visible world of international relations. Drop a comment below with your assessment. Do you think Iran genuinely dismantled an extensive Mossad network across 28 countries? Or is this strategic messaging amplifying a smaller counterintelligence success? And what does this tell us about the future of the Iran-Israel conflict? The intelligence war continues whether we see it or not. We're just giving you the analysis to understand what's really happening behind the headlines.